This is the Lockpicking Lawyer, and what I have for you today is a Kryptonite New York Fahgettaboudit lock. This is the flagship of Kryptonite's line of bike locks with a 10 out of 10 security rating. And folks, I've got to say, this is the beefiest bike lock I have ever seen. This thing weighs in at about 4.5 pounds. The lock body is made of 2 pretty thick layers of hardened steel, and I'll show you them a little later when we take this apart. And this shackle is a full 18 millimeters thick. Not only is that the thickest shackle that I've ever seen on a bike lock, but it's the thickest by a pretty wide margin. Then holding it all together is this Kryptonite disc detainer core. Now these disc detainer cores tend to be a little bit harder to pick than most others, if for no other reason than the skills and tools required to open them up tend to be a little bit less common. But what we're going to do is see what we can do to pick this lock open and see if this core is up to the exceptionally high standards of the rest of this lock. Now the first thing to note in picking is that this core is set very, very deeply into this lock. In fact, so deep that my disc detainer pick will not reach the core. So I have two options. I can either modify the tool by turning this shoulder down a little bit, or I can remove this plastic cover with a 1/16 inch Allen wrench. And since that is by far the easiest option, that's what I'm going to do. Now these screws that I'm taking out are actually what hold this lock together when the shackle is removed. However, when the shackle is in place, removing these screws doesn't do anything to compromise the physical security. Now that we have that off, our first step in picking this will be to rotate all of the discs as far clockwise as they will go. Then what I do after that is rotate the front disc counterclockwise just a little bit. And the reason I do that is to provide myself a little shoulder for my disc detainer pick to rest on when I insert it into the lock, and make sure I don't insert this tensioning portion too far. So let's get this into place. Okay, I think I've got that where I want it. And this is a bit of an awkward position to pick in front of this camera, but let's make it work. Okay, 1 is loose, so is 2. So is 3, 4, I think 5. Moved him too far. Got to click there. Okay, moving back. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4. I accidentally moved him again. Okay, and that last one seems to be in place. Go back to the beginning again. 1 is loose, so is 2. Little click out of 3. Nothing from 4. Click out of 5. Nothing on 6. 1's still loose, so is 2. 3 feels loose. Okay, hit 4, and it feels like we just opened this up. Okay, so not that hard to get into this. Certainly it takes a couple minutes, but that's the case with most disc detainer cores. But I have to attribute the ease with which this was opened to the fact that I did not feel any false gates in this core. And if in fact there are no false gates, I see that as a major unforced error on the part of Kryptonite, because it's something very easy to do, and it's also something that would make picking much, much more difficult. Okay, let's take this apart and I'll show you what I can of the insides of this lock. taking this vinyl coating off, And since we've already removed these two screws, it allows the inner lock body to come out of the outer shell. Now, an interesting note here, on a previous Kryptonite New York lock that I reviewed, there was a small cutout next to the keyhole that I thought could allow us to drill for the sidebar on the disc detainer core. That cutout is not present here, and that probably makes this design a little bit more secure. Now on this inner core, you can see we have the core itself and the two locking bolts. And let's see if we can get that core out of there. I can pull it out, and let me show you how this is disassembled and frankly why I will not be disassembling it. You can see this is held together with a little snap ring right about there. And I could probably dig that out if I really tried, but I have absolutely no idea how I would get it back in. So for now, I am not taking this apart. Then inside of this next layer of hardened steel, we have a plastic, I guess, guide that holds the two locking lugs in place. Now normally I don't like to see plastic in the locking mechanism of any lock, but I'm going to give them a pass on this one because I think that even if you were to heat this up and melt the plastic from the outside, I'm not convinced that these locking lugs would go anywhere. It's certainly possible, but it's certainly, I would not see it as a reliable attack at all because I'm not sure how they could fall out of place. In any case, that's all I have for you on this Kryptonite New York Forget About It lock. An incredibly robust bike lock, one that I would not hesitate to use. The core is a little bit softer than I would like it to be. I'd love to see some false gates or some other anti-pick measures in there. But the reality is that picking really isn't a large concern on the street, so that really doesn't compromise the real world security of this thing. And the reality is this thing is probably going to stop most bike thieves. The way you get into this is get an angle grinder and take 5 minutes, create a lot of noise, and cut this shackle, and it won't be an easy thing to do. So that's it for today. If you do have any questions or comments, please put them below. If you like this video and would like to see more like it, please subscribe. And as always, have a nice day. Thank you.